Rian Johnson's obsession with subverting expectations means that he has finally found his home and stride in the mystery genre. And here he finds himself closely following Agatha Christie's footsteps in another shockingly star-studded production. While Knives Out was an interesting take on the mansion inheritance mystery plot, Glass Onion is an island vengeance plot that has notable elements taken from both And Then There Were None, as well as Death on the Nile. In this, Mr. Not-Elon Musk invites his group of friends to a Greek island. The establishing character moment is that the invitation is in a giant puzzle box. All the friends are terrible, self-absorbed stereotypes. From the bodybuilder men's rights jerk who lives with his mom, to the bimbo model with the exasperated assistant, to the politician deeply indebted to the billionaire. The only straight man characters are the beleaguered scientist, the ex-business partner, and the detective. What gets to me is how Johnson both completely includes and subverts all of the genre conventions. The group is alone on the island of an eccentric billionaire to play a murder game, starting himself as the victim. Our detective is suspiciously invited by someone unknown. The billionaire has a spray that completely cures COVID. That's just casually tossed aside as an excuse for no one to wear masks. Everyone has a motive for murder. The obvious scene for the murder leaves everyone unharmed. The subsequent events lead you to a surprisingly unsurprising revelation about the murders that happened. Now, for spoilers. The real twist is that the partner was dead all along, and the woman present being her twin sister. And the most surprising thing was the obvious killer, the billionaire, was actually the killer. This was what brought Murder on the Nile to mind, as the obvious killer was so obvious that you immediately dismiss the possibility. On the other hand, the big surprise was that the detective and the twin sister were working together the whole time, which reframed all of the prior scenes as a complicated heist plot. Now, I have no qualms about the mystery. Having the obvious solution be the actual solution is an interesting untwist, and the various tropes that were both played straight and subverted did leave me second-guessing myself until the end. Now, I have only two real objections to this story. One in the premise and one in the climax. The premise has a bit of technobabble about how the billionaire investing in a company that invented solid hydrogen made from water that promises perfect clean energy. However, he's rushing it and ignoring safety concerns. Now, this is a common problem with technobabble in a modern setting. I don't mind pure gibberish, but this is just real enough to fall into several problems. First, it falls into the tired cliche of the rich having solutions to all of our problems and not releasing it for vague evil reasons. That's pretty tired. It's also notably done in the intro where everyone gets a single spray in their mouths so they can abandon masks the rest of the movie. Secondly, and I will give some props, that some of the side characters do mention real problems with hydrogen as a fuel. Most notably, hydrogen has a tendency to react with its container, which produces hydrogen embrittlement. It also has a tendency to leak through solid materials since it's simply so small a molecule. Finally, the stuff is downright explosive, and worst of all, produces a clear flame. If there was a hydrogen fire from a pipe right in front of you, you would feel the heat and hear the burning, but you couldn't see the flame. Many people in noisy plants have walked right through a hydrogen jet fire, only to notice when they were already burning. However, the biggest problem with hydrogen as a fuel isn't the safety. The biggest problem is that it isn't a fuel at all. Hydrogen does not exist in raw form. You have to make it. And to get hydrogen from water, you have to pour in all the energy to break the hydrogen-oxygen bonds. This is the same energy you get back later by burning it. Once you add an efficiency, it's at best a 30% net loss of energy. Now, if you have an infinite source of energy, hydrogen is probably our only infinitely scalable storage medium, which is why it's incorporated into many long-term plans for the future. But you can't use it as an energy source. Therefore, the key point where they're trying to push through a power plant while ignoring safety concerns is just ridiculous. And the idea that you could solve any of these problems by crystallizing it into an explosive solid is even worse, because burning solids has a lot of additional problems compared to burning gases or liquids. Now, I can forgive this point, because as I've said, it's technobabble. I can take an acceptable break from reality for the sake of providing a plot point. The bigger issue is the climax, where there are two critical pieces that are intertwined. Point 1. As a big part of the revelation is that the billionaire is a bit of an idiot. He keeps using the wrong vocabulary, and never has any meaningful ideas of his own. Every part of his life is because he hired people. Point 2. He stole his company from his partner because she had drawn the idea on a napkin, and he claimed that it was his idea in the first place. Now, the napkin is clearly a reference to the Chippendale napkin. However, that wasn't a company idea, but an actual contract that was conveniently lost. In this case, the big lawsuit that provided motive for the murder relied on whose idea the company was. Now, this is a classic artist perspective, that ideas are all important, but management is not. However, there's a reason that companies don't have a dedicated idea man, but they have a lot of managers. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Heck, just look at this channel. Over 100 ideas in little 5 to 10 minute formats. I think a dime is a generous estimate of how much I've made from most of them. The real work is in the implementation of the idea and turning it into reality. A lawsuit wouldn't turn on whose idea the company originally was, but would be about how the company was structured and everyone's place in it. Even in the fiction, the idea that the billionaire is an idiot who made it big by mooching off others doesn't really flesh out, as all of the group begins to get success by his organization and actions, going from mid-30s washouts to being powerful and wealthy. In business, raw intelligence is far often less important than knowing whom to talk to and how to get them to trust you. Something our villain can clearly do in spades. This really wouldn't be such a big deal if it wasn't such a crux of the movie. It was treated as part of the revelation, not a twist-the-knife attempt to coerce a confession. That detracted from the climax for me in many ways because it was so unnecessary. The murders were very simple. That doesn't mean they were stupid. It doesn't mean they had to be done by someone stupid. There's a reason that engineers call simplicity in design elegance. Now, it's not the biggest of issues, but it does bother me because of how out of place it is in an otherwise very well-developed narrative. But, with these caveats, which overall aren't terribly large, I would fully suggest seeing this movie. And keep an eye open for any further entries in the series. Benoit Blanc might not yet be on the level of Poirot, Marple, or Fletcher. He's had a few solid entries, and I'm interested in where they go next. Thanks for listening, y'all, and Merry Christmas.